Something terrible came with the rain. Part 2. I felt guilty and stupid for disobeying the alert instructions like that. In my skepticism and lack of understanding, I thought it was a simple rain warning and decided to carelessly move about my property. Now those soldiers were dead, and I may have had part of the blame to take. I tried to push that thought out of my head and to figure out what I should do next. I checked my phone again, and there was, of course, still no signal. I made sure my windows were covered properly and turned on the TV. I flipped through the channels, but none of them seemed to work. I quickly turned off the TV out of fear that I'll attract more of whatever the hell was out there. I went to the storage room and fetched my dusty old radio. After putting in the batteries, I turned up the volume and started fiddling with the frequencies. Static, static, static. No, wait. There was something on one of those frequencies, along with static. There were voices in the background, just barely audible. I adjusted the radio wheel until I could hear the voices more clearly.
Dib, from HQ?
One of the voices said.
Negative. S, sweeping, until we get...
The other voice responded.
You, not go by this?
Voice 1 asked. At this point, the voices became a lot clearer.
Yeah, HQ ordered a retreat and they'll cordon off the city.
Voice 2 responded.
Wait, what about the search and rescue?
Voice 1 asked.
Fuck that. This whole fucking town's a mess as it is. HQ said there's not going to be any more rescue attempts.
Voice 2 replied.
So 36 got way out of hand, huh?
Voice 1 asked.
Yep, it's not our problem anymore. Any survivors on your end?
Voice 2 said.
A couple, but they already saw too much. Had to dispose of them. Copy that. Once you're due, be sure, back, base.
The voices started to cut off again, bit by bit, and then they went silent completely, leaving me only with static. What the hell was that all about? What was 36, and what did they mean they had to dispose of the survivors, and that there would be no rescue? Something was definitely very wrong here, and it was clear that the army knew something that us, the civilians, didn't. One thing was for sure, though. I had to get out of town. I couldn't wait for rescue, which wouldn't even come. Being out there with those hostile soldiers, or even worse, those things that wiped out the soldiers, didn't put my mind at ease, but I had no other choice. I went upstairs and packed my bag. I put in a pair of clothes, because I knew I'd probably be drenched from the rain. I also packed a flashlight and some food and water. I peeked out of my bedroom window and saw that the downpour was finally showing signs of subsiding. The streets were completely empty, save for the dead soldiers. From here, I could see across from my house that my neighbor's door was left open, allowing the wind and rain to seep inside. I tried not to think about what might have happened there, and I had no intentions of finding out. I put on my backpack and approached the stairs. Not 3 steps down, I heard something coming from the radio. Along with the static, there was a sound of slow wheezing. I quickly went down and grabbed the radio, putting my ear against it to hear the sound better. I tried adjusting the frequency, but no matter how much I did, nothing changed and the static and the wheezing remained the same. Frustrated, I figured the radio was broken and turned it off. But the static and wheezing didn't stop. And then I saw something in the corner of my eye that made my blood run cold. Mud tracks. They were all over my carpet, coming in from the kitchen and leading to the corner of my room. I froze in place, listening as the radio static and wheezing permeated the room. After what seemed like forever, I broke out of my trance and looked towards the corner. The first thing I saw there were bony feet caked with mud. As I slowly moved my gaze up, I realized I was staring at a crouched, emaciated figure which faced the corner of my room, but I couldn't tell its features due to the dark. With extremely trembling hands, I pointed my flashlight to the corner and flicked it on. A tiny, completely nude and emaciated humanoid creature that I could only describe as human-like goblin came into light. Its spine was pronounced against its tight skin on the back, so much that I couldn't count the vertebrae. Its limbs looked like they had no meat on them whatsoever, and could barely hold its fragile frame. As soon as the flashlight illuminated the creature, it jerked its head towards me with mouth wide open and scared eyes. The radio static and wheezing got much louder, and it was just then that I realized the sound was not coming from my radio. It was all I could take. I turned around and bolted out of there, and into the rain, which now had turned into a drizzle, not even bothering to close my front door. I ran down the street, occasionally looking behind me to see if the goblin creature would come chasing me. My sprint slowed down to a jog, and eventually, I stopped and looked back towards my house, leaning on my knees and panting, listening to the sound of rain around me. I breathed a sigh of relief momentarily, and then I heard a blood-curdling scream behind me. I turned around and saw a young man who was covered in wounds all over, crawling towards me with anger in his eyes, and a bloodlust I had never seen in anyone before. As he got closer, I realized he was missing both legs in what looked like a terrible accident, leaving only 2 mangled stumps, but that didn't stop him from closing in on me. I started running again, and it was just then that I realized how much the streets were actually not empty. I saw dead bodies of both civilians and soldiers. I saw crashed vehicles and more corpse-looking people crawling out despite their fatal injuries. I saw amalgamations of creatures I cannot describe in words, roaming about the streets or lying dead along with the soldiers, their dark blood staining the ground beneath them. I looked back and saw that, despite my running speed, the legless man was still close behind me. I turned right and ran across a lawn, climbing over the fence and into a backyard. I stopped and stared at the fence, figuring I was safe. There was no way the crawling man could reach me here. But a second later, he came crawling over the fence, still screaming at the top of his lungs. I started backpedaling, but slipped and fell on my back. The legless man lunged at me from a distance that would make an Olympic athlete envious. But before he could fall on top of me, he fell backwards on the grass with a loud bang. I looked to my right and saw an elderly man pointing a shotgun at the attacker. The legless man got right back up and started crawling again, until the man blasted him one more time. This time, the crawler fell backwards and writhed on the floor with a screaming impossible to be made by humans, before completely ceasing all movement and noise, and I was left with nothing but the sound of rain, again. And then the old man cocked his shotgun once more. I looked up at him and saw that he had trained it on me, and the way his knuckles had turned white, I knew he was ready to shoot me there. "Wait, don't shoot, I'm not one of them!" I raised one hand, still sitting on the ground. "Prove it," he said with a rough voice. What do you mean, prove it? I'm talking to you, aren't I?" I scoffed. "That don't mean shit." He spat on the ground. "Look, I just left my home minutes ago because of all the crazy shit that's happening. I have no idea what's going on, I swear," I recited in one breath. He didn't bulge for a while, the expression on his face looking like he was weighing his options. Finally, after a moment of contemplation, lowered the gun down and gave me his hand, saying, "You'll catch a cold out here, son. Let's get you inside." This is Kinetic Symphony. If you've enjoyed this narrated story, please subscribe and like the video to help me grow. Thank you.